My name is Douglas Jones, and I do apologize in advance. I really just kind of threw this presentation together like a good couple hours before today, but I did get the colors right, so I think it matches the Durham University's colors. So just 3 objectives today. I just really want to talk about my story, lessons learned, and of course have time for Q&A. Within my story, obviously I'm going to be talking about things that I guess successful, enterprising persons or entrepreneurs do. And I think within my story, I imagine all you all could relate or are relating now with whichever adversities or circumstances you all are going through now. So just by a show of hands, before I begin, how many of you all are first years, second years, third years, fourth years? And, we don't have enough people in the room for me to pull 5th years. So my story began at the age of 16. My father and I, we started a computer consulting company. It was something that my father really wanted to do. He comes from a more engineering background. At 16, I come from a background of, cool, this sounds great, let's do it. And the computer consulting business, what we did, we really wanted to build computers for clients. We identified, quite frankly, working professionals who had no idea what to do with computers. Now, keep in mind, this is in 2001. I'm 29, so I'll be 30 next month. I know I look quite young, but so in 2001, we just overcame the whole Y2K scare, and globalization was being thrown around for the first time, and so computers was just definitely on the rise, both hardware and software, internet, and so forth. So this was our first business. It was quite successful in terms of scaling up. It went from a 2-person business to I think 4 or 5 person business before I ended up leaving. I think, as you'll find amongst yourselves and amongst other millennials, those under the age of 30, we get bored quite quickly. So once we start doing something for a while, we start to lose that interest, and that's what happened with me. So the next thing I went into was students working at technology. At most American high schools, we were all starting to adopt technology in our education. And I thought it would be really cool for me to work in a classroom that built computers. And what I didn't know at the time was my assignment was for me to lead a team of students and taking recycled computer parts and building them and delivering them to low-income families. When I was putting the presentation together today, I didn't realize, but that is a form of social entrepreneurship, because delivering computers to low-income families or families in need of a computer, that is effectively what social enterprise is all about. So obviously here you see a photo of a cinema, and at 17 I decided to, this was about 1 year before I was graduating from high school, I decided to take up employment. Now you may ask yourself, oh wait Doug, you were starting a business at 16, why did you decide to get a job? And great question. Honestly, for me, I want to be around people because I love people, and what better place for me to be in that environment than to work at a movie theater. And this was my first job. This is not the actual theater, but the conditions are just like that. It was quite rinky-dink, if you know what that means. Rinky-dink theater, it was very old, and after 2 interviews, I was landed a job here. And I worked there for about a year before I kind of started contemplating, what am I going to do? And keep in mind, I was still in school. So not only was I still working maybe 5 to 10 hours a week on my dad's business, I was also working this business, and I was also going to school as well. So when you kind of factor in 2 jobs plus school, something has to give, and you're right, it did. It was my academics. I ended up graduating in 2003. I was ranked 400 out of 415. In 2003, the United States invaded Iraq and Afghanistan. And of course, major tech companies that you all are synonymous with today were in their infancy. Like, for example, Facebook, was just getting started. MySpace was like the big thing back then. And I think iTunes was created back in 2003 as well. So that kind of gives you perspective in terms of, if I wanted to go into a technology career, there was a lot of room for me to do so, but not as many opportunities in terms of employment. And of course, I had very upset parents because, of course, when you're graduating from high school, most of your peers are going off to, Durham or going off to Harvard or going off to university, no university would accept me because of my low grades. So I'm going to throw this question back at you. What would you do if you were in a situation where you just finished school, you didn't have no universities offer you any letters of admission, you have a war going on, and you have very upset parents? What would you do? You're like, oh God, this guy. Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe think about what really interests you, what will get you up in the morning to keep you motivated, that you don't feel like failing.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe try and think, well, if you really enjoy, say, tech, for example, then see what avenues you can get in, or make your own avenues.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else?
So you're saying you've got your low academics, but I think what I would do is almost like a skills audit. So I'd think I might not be very high in the academics, but surely I've got other skills that are going to differentiate me in the sort of jobs market.
Good point. Good
so
point.
I'm trying to sell myself.
Yeah, good point. Good point. I'd
redo final year at high school or something.
Yeah. That was certainly on the cards, not by choice. All these are very valid points. What I ended up doing was my parents basically gave me a choice. Either you join the military, or you start your own business, or you pursue higher education or continue with your education. I said, well, I wasn't going to go to war, and I didn't really have the confidence yet to start my own business. And I did do the skills audit, and I determined that, I'm going to give school another shot, and that's what I did. So I opted for higher education. I enrolled into a local community college. So let's say a Newcastle college or a Durham college, if you will. And I decided to continue working. At the time, 2003, in the fall, there was an opportunity for me to work with the company in opening up a brand new movie theater. And I was like, well, why not? It's a change of pace. It's going to be a lot faster. It's going to be a lot more people. And I did that. And I worked extra hard to kind of work my way all the way up. And we opened a theater, and I was promoted to crew lead or supervisor quite rapidly. And that, to me, was a big success for me at the time, because I was like, wow, great, finally my life is going in a good direction. Following that stint, about 2 years later, there was another opportunity for me to open up another theater. This was in Washington, D.C., 16 screens, a much larger theater, much higher profile theater. And I was, starting to gain some traction. I worked up good grades at this local college to get into university at George Mason, and I went to study business. I felt now that I'm a manager at this nice, pristine theater, I'd probably think that it'd be in my best interest to study business so that I can get the accounting and learn the different functions. So I went to do that. And right after opening up this particular theater here, and that's the theater there, I was promoted to operations manager. At the time, I was the youngest manager in the Washington, D.C. area at this particular company, and I was promoted at 21 as a manager. I was managing about 115 people at that time. But then, as always in my life, you're faced with adversity. And in 2006, I was suspended from university because, once again, I was devoting much of my time to my job and not so much at university. I ended up failing all of my classes. So if someone ever tells you it's no way you can actually fail all your classes in one term, you've met someone who has. I literally failed all my classes in one term, and I was also growing bored of my job because now I've been at the same company for 4 years, and I didn't really know what to do. And the bottom line, I had extremely upset parents at this point. So I guess the question goes back to you. What would you do at this point? Like, oh man, like, you're done. You're done. Well, there were a few things I did. First and foremost, when I transferred to George Mason, I knew that I wanted to come to the UK. Having grown up in Germany, I come from a military background, so I've been able to travel around the world at such a young age, and I really wanted to get back into doing that. So when I transferred to George Mason, I imagine you all have a study abroad office here. That's one of the very first things I did. I went to the study abroad office and said, I want to study abroad in the UK at some point, and I'm going to start saving up money, and we identified various opportunities that would allow for me to do so. Unfortunately, when summer 2006 came and I was academically suspended, that prevented me from studying abroad. However, I was able to network with one of the employees from the study abroad office, and he was able to talk to the administration or admissions office, and they were able to work out a way for me to not only study abroad, but I'll be able to get some type of credit for it as well. And that's exactly what I did. So in the summer of 2006, with the help of the Center for Global Education, I was able to work in London as a research assistant for former Labour MP Anne Snowgrove. And that was a good time for me. June 2006 to July 2006, I was in London, working in Portcullis House. And for me, I thought that was a good way for me to not only just kind of work, but also get my mind, to try to get myself together, because trying to overcome, adversity, it can be very difficult and it can be quite challenging. And for me to have a bit of a change of scenery, I thought this was a good opportunity for me to do. Now, I say this because, all you all are, for most of you, you're in your final year and you're looking at various opportunities. And, I understand the job market could be quite challenging or a lot of competition out there. But I firmly believe that if you really want a particular job, or if you really want to do something, I come from, kind of a country background where there's more than one way to skin a cat. So just a prime example, I know some Durham students end up going off to consulting. If Bain comes knocking on the door and unfortunately you're not able to do it, that's perfectly fine. It's perfectly okay, because whichever activity or whichever function you may end up doing now when you graduate, that the skills and experiences that you're gaining now could help you along the way, so that when another consulting firm comes, BCG or McKinsey comes along 4 or 5 years down the road, you'll have the skills equipped to be successful in that particular industry. Same with law, same with entrepreneurship. So I came back from the States, and I had to, of course, sit out for a term. And also in 2008, I don't know if you all remember, the economic crisis took place, and I was made redundant from AMC. I was able to take a leave of absence, by the way, for me to study abroad, but shortly after, in 2008, I was made redundant. So I was kind of back at square one. What do you do? So I moved back home with my parents, and I continued studying abroad. I continued studying at George Mason University, working my GPA back up to a respectable level. And I ended up getting a job in retail. So like the gentleman said in the back, I believe Ed? Yeah, so I finally ended up doing that skills audit and getting back into computers, something that I enjoy doing. In the meantime, I also kind of thought, okay, maybe studying business may not be the route that I should take, and maybe getting into politics or international relations is something that I could do. Writing is a good strong suit of mine, so I figured I can go ahead and work and go to school, write some good essays on the political structure in China, and earn good grades. So that's what I did. And ultimately, I had a dream of maybe becoming a US diplomat in the process. And that worked out quite well, because one of the things I've learned from this particular element in my story is that when you have a dream, or when you have a passion, communicate that to everyone. Literally share it with everyone. When you go out the door, when you go out tonight, or wherever you are, tell everyone what you want to do, because you never know who's going to help you with that. And that's exactly what happened in this particular job. Working in retail, you would never expect that the person that you're helping is going to be the one that's going to land you that next job. And after several hundred customers later, I met this gentleman who happened to work at the State Department, and I was telling him that once I graduate in a few months' time, I do plan to work at the State Department. Now, he didn't know that I had quite low grades, because obviously when you work at such a high pressure, high profile job, you need to have the credentials to kind of work there. But he didn't care about that, because he was so impressed with customer service, he was impressed with presentation, he was impressed with the level of ambition that he was able to grant me that job. And I ended up starting work at the State Department in December 2009. I ended up graduating from George Mason the following month in January. And the next line is important. I began preparing for, my master's degree in 2012. So I was admitted into Newcastle University in September 2013, but a full year before, I was already working behind the scenes at the State Department for that thing. So another key point to remember is that when you are studying here at Durham and you know that you kind of want to get into a career, whether or not you're able to get into that, just plan. It's just strategize, because ultimately I believe you'll end up wherever you want to go. And of course, my parents were happy once I made it to the State Department. On the far left is the Department of State swearing-in ceremony. I was sworn in by the Undersecretary for Management, Patrick Kennedy, no relation to John F. Kennedy. There's my dad there. He was happy, but he doesn't look happy in that picture. And there's me at the White House. I was there for the state visit of German Chancellor Angela Merkel, and there's my colleague, Mr. Wasser. This next photo here, so my first job at the State Department was to work in a correspondence unit, and I was more like a low-level intern. And so let's say, for example, Prime Minister David Cameron wanted to write a letter to Hillary Clinton on Chelsea Clinton. The letter wouldn't actually go directly to the secretary. It would actually come through our office, and we would read it. And we would say, okay, this is quite personal. Then we would go ahead and direct it to the secretary, because one thing that we've noticed is that obviously Hillary Clinton was perhaps one of the most popular secretaries of state that we've had in recent history. So everyone wanted to write her. We had people from prison writing to the secretary about, can you donate money for me to get out of prison? So everything couldn't go to her, and we had to screen that out. Ultimately, after working in the correspondence unit under the secretary's office, I ended up networking with this young guy, and he got me into the operations center. And I would say for this was a hallmark of my young State Department career, because working at this operations center really taught me how to start a business, and I'll certainly explain why very shortly. And that's the secretary pouring a drink to his press secretary, Jin Saki. And I'll show you guys just a tidbit of what I did.
Good test email. Got it?
The Operations Center, OPS for short, the State Department's 24/7 nerve center.
Would they wake up Secretary Clinton at that hour?
They would wake up anyone that they needed to wake up, essentially. So that is their job.
Got Merrill's voicemail.
Tracking hotspots around the globe and how to get American citizens out of them. Director Rena Bitter says she's never seen it so busy.
We had a task force on Egypt, then that went down. We had a week, and then a task force on Libya. And then we had Japan, and then before Japan went down, we had Libya again. So we had two going at the same time.
Busy. 60 staff coordinate all communications for the State Department around the world, giving Secretary of State Hillary Clinton sometimes minute-by-minute updates, putting her in touch with anyone, anywhere.
Now, one evening, I wanted to speak with an ambassador who was visiting Washington. So, of course, I asked Ops to find him for me.
Ops quickly patched her through.
Only later, I learned that the ambassador did not have his cell phone with him.
His staff told Ops he was out to dinner, but they didn't know where.
Ops called the ambassador's hotel and learned that the concierge had recommended 3 restaurants, but they didn't know which one he chose.
Ops called them all, emailed a picture of the ambassador, and asked them to scan the dining rooms until they found him.
That is perseverance.
The Ops Center was created 50 years ago, reportedly when President John Kennedy couldn't reach anyone at the State Department during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Back then, it used cables like this one from 1979. Embassy Tehran was taken by demonstrators at 11 a.m. today.
Amazing.
Former Secretary Madeleine Albright says she'll never forget one call from Ops.
And I was in Italy, and they found me, and they said the embassies had just been blown up. I said, what are you talking about?
Ops even helped save one of those U.S. pilots shot down over Libya this past March, when a Libyan man who once received an education grant from the State Department found him.
So what did he do? He called ops. And what did ops do? Well, ops called the Defense Department and said, oh, by the way, we have your pilot. Why don't you come pick him up?
Jill Doherty, CNN, the State Department.
So that was my effectively 3 years at the State Department. And that's kind of a gist of some of the things that we did. I remember my first day working for Secretary Kerry. I was tasked with calling John Kerry and letting him know that he had a phone call, and I was so nervous, you know, because this guy's, he's worth $300 million, and his wife is the heir to Heinz ketchup. And so I was shaking, like, you know, profusely, and the guy next to me was like, don't worry, you know, he puts his pants on the same way you do, it's gonna be okay. So that kind of calmed me down a bit. So working at the State Department was certainly an interesting time, but I wanted to do something more. You know, I wanted to, once again, I wanted to study abroad. I wanted to go back to the UK, and I wanted to pursue my master's. How do I do that? Well, I recall at Newcastle University coming to Washington, D.C. While I was still working at the State Department. And one of the things I did beforehand is I wanted to impress them. You know, if Newcastle was coming out their way to recruit the best and brightest, supposedly, then I wanted to be one of those students that they, you know, would want to recruit. And so I did a lot of research on the university, looked at the numbers and statistics and so forth, and I wowed them. And then that was that, you know. I went on my merry way, and they went on their merry way. I went ahead and applied to Newcastle University. I considered Southampton, Manchester. I didn't really consider Durham because I wasn't really too familiar with the entrepreneurship program. But unfortunately, because of my academic career, I was actually rejected by Newcastle University. And I was kind of like, whoa, wow, like I did all this work. So I even prepared ahead of time for this huge escape, if you will, from the State Department, and I was rejected. What do you do? I won't ask you guys that question, but effectively what I did is I called the postgraduate recruitment manager. That's what I did. I didn't really take no for an answer. And I said, I just want to let you all know that I was rejected from Newcastle University. Now, we can go ahead and, you know, hang up the phone, and you can tell me there's nothing that you can do. But, you know, given the conversation that we had in Washington, you were impressed with me and you were impressed with my potential. And I'm just letting you know that if you were to admit me, you would not be disappointed. And Newcastle University would be proud to have a student like me. And, you know, that was bold, certainly, and something that I've never done before. But I was adamant and I was sure of myself, and I was quite understanding and knowing that if they were to overturn that decision, that they wouldn't let me down, and I wouldn't let them down. And that's precisely what happened. About 3 weeks later, the postgraduate international recruitment manager came back and said, we looked at your personal statement, and we've looked at your academic history, and we're going to give you a chance. And so they admitted me, and I guess the rest is kind of history in that regard. But I say that because you're gonna be faced with no's, you know, and the whole point of someone telling you no, of course, I'm just talking in terms of professional stance, is to see how bad do you want it, you know. Okay, you may have been turned down of a job opportunity or a placement opportunity, but guess what? It's certainly not the end of the world. And if there's anything that I've learned, and anything that I hope you all would take away from the presentation, is that everything is temporary. You know, so wherever you are, and I'm not sure where everyone is right now, everything is temporary. So just, I guess, keep hold of that, and I'm sure you all would do just fine. At Newcastle, I ended up starting my second business called Arts Aspire. Arts Aspire was a social enterprise that I had a lady who was a dancer and another person who was in the theater arts. And we wanted to really educate artists on how to be more entrepreneurial in the creative industry. As you know, a lot of the city councils across the UK are cutting back funding. So those in the creative industry aren't able to utilize those public funds to be able to market their work. So we felt that Art Aspire would be a gap to that. and it was quite successful. Some of the things that we did was we held workshops for graphic design artists, for dancers, and we taught them how to write a business plan. We taught them how to communicate. We taught them how to network. And that was part of my assignment, but I think it was quite successful in the sense that we've had a few local artists who are now traveling throughout the country, and they're able to market their work quite successfully. I also attended the NACU Enterprise Conference. Has anyone heard of NACU? It's the National Association for College and University Entrepreneurs. Okay. Has anyone heard of Entrepreneurs Durham? Okay, so you guys know Abs. Abs, he's president. You know Abs.
Not personally, but I do know.
Cool. So the NACU conference in Sheffield that was held back in 2013 was a great conference, and in fact I met my co-founder there. And I say that is because oftentimes if you go to events, it's really all about networking, but really it's all about how you sell yourself and exactly what you want from that event. So if you're just going to a conference or an event just to kind of socialize, you can do that. Or you can say, I'm going to an event and I want to network with these people because I need this X amount of needs. So that's kind of how I looked at it, and that's what I took away from the event. In addition to playing American football, I was also a Business Board of Students Society member, and I was also on the student staff representative committee as well. I was also the student orator for my graduation ceremony, and a lot of the things that I said in the ceremony is something that I've also resonated in this presentation. So what am I working on now? Right now, I've just completed the Tier 1 Entrepreneur Visa. So for any international students, I'm happy to talk to you guys afterwards on what that process looks like. And on each of your chairs, there are leaflets for the Scholar of Soho. That's one of the startups that I'm working with now. And what are the lessons learned? So first and foremost, your network is your largest social asset. You have to learn how to leverage that consistently and effectively each and every day. Identify their needs. And literally, I always recommend to talk to about 5 to 10 people every day. A good example of that was this past year. I met Wai Fung back in October last year. I organized a leadership and development conference called Max Life. And Wai Fung and I met quite intimately during a staring exercise. We were literally this close for 5 minutes. It's a long time looking at Wai Fung, trust me. And Wai Fung, we've learned so much from each other from that time. About 3 weeks ago, Wai Fung came to Newcastle and we had dinner at I think Hamburger and Company, and he was talking to me about what he's trying to do with obviously becoming third year and networking and so forth. And so Wai Fung was obviously leveraging his network, and so I introduced him to the founder of Scarlet of Soho, and so it's really up to Wai Fung now to leverage that connection in terms of where he wants to go from there, because both Wai Fung and the founder are both of Malaysian descent, and with YC, who's the founder of Scarlet, being from Cambridge, and both having some networks in law, Wai Fung could potentially have a job lined up for him for a placement in his third year because of that connection. Leadership. One of the things I've learned from my experience is, learning how to develop your soft skills. So networking, communicating, those are things that are in huge demand, not just in entrepreneurship, but also in the employment sector as well. I think one of the professors at Newcastle, who is kind of a Durham guy, he always talked about soft skills. That's not something that's really talked about much in higher education nowadays. So develop those things where you can, when you can. And of course, mentorship. How many of you guys have mentors?
In an academic context?
Either academic, professional. Yeah, if you don't have one, preferably in a professional context, get one. And it could literally be anyone. I know for me, one of the things I did was I just went on LinkedIn and I just typed in a subject matter, so like entrepreneurship, and then I just really just scroll down different profiles. Now, of course, nowadays, you get that notification if someone looks at your profile. I didn't really care. You know, I was just looking for a suitable mentor, and I found one. So if you're looking for a mentor, I would highly recommend LinkedIn as one, or obviously in your social settings, if you have someone that you really look up highly to, I would definitely recommend that as well. Take risks and take them often. That's certainly something that I would highly recommend. I think there is a study about which countries are more risk averse than others. I don't think statistically the UK takes risk often, but I would certainly recommend for young people to certainly take risks and take them often, because you would learn a lot from that. No, it's not always the final answer, but being persistent is a great attribute to have. And during my graduation, I'm surprised no one gave me any flack for it, but I did quote Will Smith. So to live your life, take chances and be a bit crazy, because right now it's the oldest you've been and the youngest you'll be ever again. So, and that's a good word of wisdom from Mr. Will Smith. Are there any questions?
I guess so you said LinkedIn is quite a useful way in meeting mentors or like potential like co-founders or like just business people, I guess. So how would you say we should actually use LinkedIn and kind of leverage it to our best interest?
Yeah, good question. So, for example, if you came across my profile, if you will, and you wanted to, use me as a mentor, or anyone for that example, one of the things I would do is I would read their profile and look at certain things that were of interest to you. And I believe you only have 250 characters, which is basically like a tweet, to really get the message across. So one of the things I would say is, dear such and such, my name is this. I am, a ex-student or ex-year at Durham Uni, and I was impressed with what level of experience or what job that he's doing, and I would like to know if you would be interested in a mentor-mentee relationship. Now, either they can say yes or no, that's fine, but if you send 10, 15 of those, I'm sure you'll more likely get a yes eventually.
What advice would you give to somebody who, so I'm in my final year, I'm going to use myself as an example as well, and I've got quite a lot of ideas about different things that I might want to do in my career.
Yeah.
Like how, in terms of finding a mentor, how do you go about when your kind of own narrative is quite confused and
Sure.
you're not totally certain and you might kind of be quite happy to do different things?
Certainly. So you're just right now just looking at a mentor to help structure or to help refine those ideas, or?
In terms of applying for jobs and looking for a mentor that will help you kind of, make the most of your applications and the application opportunities kind of thing.
Okay. Well, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I don't know.
3 years?
So I would quite like to work in the technology industry.
Okay.
And I've started to learn to code, but
Okay.
I study arts, so
Okay.
I'm kind of, I don't have as many tech skills as maybe an engineer or a computer scientist.
Mm-hmm.
But I quite like the idea of working in the tech industry, particularly on the kind of innovation side of things, business management, that kind of thing, product innovation essentially.
Have you considered doing both? Have you considered pursuing both?
Yeah, because there are some kind of grad schemes out there that will kind of allow you to do that. So yeah.
Okay, so I am aware there's quite a few code academies or coding gigs that take place in the region, and although you may not have the commitment now to really sit down and code, but I would at least attend one of those events just to network, to say, hey, look, I've actually always been interested in the technology sector, and I ultimately would like to code. However, I also have an interest in the arts, but would it be possible to set up some type of mentor-mentee relationship, or would it be possible for us to go out for tea or coffee so I can kind of share what exactly I'm trying to do? So that could help, number one. Number two, of course, is LinkedIn. That would be a little bit more difficult because you don't really know, they don't really say in their profile, at least all of them, I am doing PHP or JavaScript or C++. So you would have to go with either those type of avenues, or I'm not too familiar with the computer science department of Durham, but any type of events that are taking place, I would certainly maybe get engaged with the organizers to leverage that network.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think my issue as well is that so 5 years is a long time, especially in tech. And what I could potentially be doing probably hasn't been created yet.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like tracking down people who are know where the industry is going.
Mm-hmm. Are you originally from here or from?
I'm from the north, Manchester.
Okay.
There's a big tech scene in Manchester.
Yes, indeed. That's a really good question. Really good question. And you also mentioned the arts as well.
Yeah, well, and like social enterprise as well.
Yeah.
I'm a very confused person.
No, that's
Not confused, interesting.
No, I think it's great to have many interests. As I've highlighted as well, I honestly did not know. I knew I wanted to start my own business when I was 16, but the path I took was way all over the world. And now I'm at that point where I can do that.
Is there any of those stages that you regret then? Or do you think you learned?
When I was younger, I regressed it. You know what? Maybe I should have just took the road less traveled. But now I don't have any regrets because now I wouldn't appreciate the ups and downs if I didn't have the setbacks that I had. So.
I'm in a similar situation to
Yeah.
my friend. I find I'm interested in a lot of areas, and there are lots of skills that I and others identify, which I really appreciate. But then honing in on one thing and sort of chasing it like a dream. I think it's great that you had your idea, that you knew in your heart of hearts you want to get to a place where you have your own business, your own company. How would you advise, I mean it's difficult for each person, but how would you advise sort of just honing in, just sort of taking the confidence to just go, you know what, just do this experience and see where it will take you?
Well, our generation will most likely be the first generation where everyone that you know is going to have multiple careers. So it's really all about which career at this point in time you're most interested in and pursue that 100%. When you get bored, then you make the preparations to pursue the next career. So every career that I pursued it 100%. And when I got bored, I went to the next one and to the next one. Our parents, they stuck to one career, and they did that, till forever. For us, it's not likely that we're going to be doing investment banking or arts or IT for an infinite amount of time. So my advice would be is to kind of maybe do a decision-making matrix. You guys know about those? Yeah. So do a decision-making matrix, weight it, and figure out, okay, I like this particular career and I like this particular career, and then weight each one, how you would do that, and then you'll be surprised at what that result comes out, and then pursue it. And of course, talk to people as well, because one of the things I did is I asked people, what was I good at, what wasn't I good at, and where do you see me? Because it's always